Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, December 10th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the target states for the Democratic Party in the 2022 Senate elections. Now, I know it seems a bit away. It is 2 years away, but it's never too early, really, to be talking about the Senate elections that will likely determine the overall Senate control. It is very likely that following the Georgia runoff elections that the Senate is still very much in contention. In the best case for the Republican Party, they remain in the majority with just 52 seats. It's actually one less than what they had going into the 2020 election. So no matter how you cut the Georgia runoff elections, they're not going to be as good of a position, they being the Republican Party, they're not going to be as good of a position and as good of a position as they were prior to the 2020 election or even going into it. So looking at this Senate map, there's a lot of states that would arguably be safe for the Republican Party. But then again, there are also states that would be safe for the Democratic Party. Today we're going to be focusing on just a handful of states that I would truly deem as target states for the Democratic Party, where I really think they should be focusing their efforts. Now, I know this map is very similar to the one in 2016. That's because it's the exact same map with the exception of actually no exception. You know, the Georgia characterization only here has another one because it's a map that hasn't considered whoever wins this Georgia runoff election on January 5th, but it's the same exact map as the one in 2016. So if you remember that election, if you remember the candidates there were some very notable ones. This is the same exact map. So it's up again, and it's arguably, less competitive for the Democratic Party, I'd say. I don't think that they're going to have as many strong candidates as they did in the past. So we're going to start off by characterizing all of the states that would be rated safe straight off the bat for both parties. Now, there is the possibility that Larry Hogan does try to run for Senate in 2022 in Maryland, but realistically, governing is very different than being a representative on the national level. Maryland's not going to budge in terms of its safe Democratic characterization. Alabama and South Carolina are not going to be competitive, and Hawaii is not either. But the reason why I have not characterized Missouri or Indiana yet is because both of these states were actually competitive back in 2016. We can actually flash back to the 2016 presidential election, where if you're looking at both of these states, Indiana and Missouri, well, they were actually pretty close. Todd Young won by just under 10 points, so it was still single digits, and then Missouri was even closer. Roy Blunt won by just a few percentage points. It was exceptionally close in the state of Missouri, and also, let's take a look at the state of Missouri on the presidential level. Jason Kander did phenomenal compared to Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump almost beat her by 20 points, and he only ran behind Roy Blunt by 3%. Can you imagine what would have happened if the election was just a little bit narrower in the state of Missouri? But I don't think that the Democratic Party is going to run Jason Kander again in this upcoming 2022 midterm election. It's expected to be a Republican wave year. It's going to have an incumbent President Biden, so it wouldn't really make sense, in my opinion, for the Democratic Party to run Jason Kander when they could use him for statewide office or for a potential governor bid in 2024. I mean, there's a number of possibilities. He's a very strong name, but I don't think that he should really tarnish his reputation by running in a Republican wave year in a state that Donald Trump still won by double digits, a safe margin in 2020 that tries to, defeat a Republican wave. Yes, it could counteract some of it, but if it's not a win, then there really was no point. And if they know that it's not going to be a win, and initial ratings pretty much tell us that it's not going to be, it would be a very large fluke if the Democratic Party was able to pick up the state of Missouri on the presidential level, because it differs from how the Republicans picked up races. Both Missouri and Indiana, I'm going to characterize straight off the bat as safe for the GOP. Realistically, both of these states are. And when you're looking at the incumbents here, they're not going to face off against some of these stronger opponents. Indiana was close because the Democratic nominee was the former senator from the state of Indiana. So there are a number of reasons as to why they were competitive in 2016. I don't think that they're going to be competitive in 2022. They could be, but it's going to be very difficult. But because both of these states are traditionally Republican states, they elect traditional Republicans. They still like President Trump, and a lot of that loyalty is going to remain with the Republican Party. Both of these states were competitive in 2008, but that's because President Obama did something that many Democrats have never been able to do, and that's appeal to the voters in Indiana and Missouri. And it was very difficult, even for Jason Kander to win in 2016. He did well, but I don't think that he's going to run again. I don't think that neither of the Democratic nominees in both Indiana and Missouri are going to run in 2022. And if they do, and they don't win, I can't imagine them running anytime in the future. And both of them are fairly young. And they do have a strong political future if they choose to wait this out. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do. But moving past those two states, let's not focus all of our time on there. But we have 13 toss-up races. Now, not all of these are going to be targets for the Democratic Party. First things first, we are going to assume that David Perdue does win in the state of Georgia. That is my initial characterization of the race. So actually, I'm going to use the small circle because it's not the one that's up for re-election in 2022. But we're under the assumption that David Perdue wins the state of Georgia. That also Kelly Loeffler wins her Senate race as well, which is why it's going to be a target state. I'm not going to characterize any Democratic states right now as target states because these are, when I say target, I mean these are states that they would like to take, their Democratic Party would like to take from the Republican Party. So I'm not really going to focus too heavily. I'm going to assume that they hold all of these races, including Arizona, including Nevada, including Colorado, including New Hampshire. When I make a video talking about where the Republican Party is going to target heavily, I would discuss those states amongst a couple of others. So overall, the Democrats will start off with their standard 48. But the Democratic Party is absolutely going to target 3 states in particular, I think, with their, the utmost concern. Looking at North Carolina and Pennsylvania, I don't know if everyone knows what these 2 states have in common, but it's the fact that both of the Republicans here are retiring incumbents. Pat Toomey has been very critical of the, modern Trumpism part of the Republican Party, very critical of the election challenging. When you're looking at, both of these states, even Richard Burr in the state of North Carolina, neither of these 2 senators have been very staunch in their opposition to a President-elect Biden. Now, both of them are not up for re-election, so they do not need to worry about, pleasing their constituents to 100% of the time. And Pat Toomey realizes he's a Republican in a state that just voted for Joe Biden. He's probably looking at the warning signs. Even in a Republican wave year, it's very possible the Democrats do well in the state of Pennsylvania because statewide Democrats actually have outrun presidential nominees in Pennsylvania specifically, and also Joe Biden if you're looking at 2018 and also just some of the 2020 results. But looking at these 2 states in particular, Pennsylvania and North Carolina, retiring incumbents immediately on the target list. The next state that I would say is actually the state of Wisconsin. Yet again, another Biden state that was for Trump, that was for Obama both times, and Democrats for 2 decades prior. But looking at the state of Wisconsin, I think that the Democratic Party is going to heavily target this race. Regardless if Johnson chooses to run or not, we are going to see a lot of money funded here. It's a state that the Democratic Party would like to win, considering they won it on the presidential level. So arguably, there should be no reason as to why they couldn't win it on the Senate level. And if the state does take a little bit of a slight partisan turn, I do actually think it's possible for the Democrats to win in all 3 of these yellow states in a Republican wave year. Even North Carolina, which some of you might not agree with. But then again, it still won't be the same as Tom Tillis. There is no incumbency factor. And the Democratic Party still has some strong Democrats that they could run. They could run Governor Roy Cooper. They could run a couple of other Democrats statewide that could do fairly well. But I think Roy Cooper would be the best bet for the state of North Carolina. But then again, at that point, they would have to give the governorship to the lieutenant governor Republican. So it's sort of a possible win-lose situation, but no matter how you cut it, there's always going to be a losing end, and it is absolutely going to be the Democratic Party in North Carolina if Roy Cooper chooses to run. But that's not saying that any other Democrat really couldn't defeat a Republican challenger here if there is, if they do play the Senate race right. But as you can see, there are still 5 toss-up races, and I know you're surprised to see Ohio and Iowa on this list, but I do actually think the Democratic Party should start investing in these states again. There's absolutely no reason to write off an entire voting block just because they didn't vote one way or, voted overwhelmingly for a certain candidate once or twice. Donald Trump was a special type of candidate. When he wasn't on the ballot, Democrats came within a few points of the Ohio governorship. They ran ahead of the Republicans in the House vote in the state of Iowa. They came within 3 points of the House vote in 2018. So when you're looking at the results in both of these states, Democrats do better when Trump isn't on the ballot. And I think that in 2022, while it may be a Republican wave year, if the Democrats can find strong candidates and run them, I think that Ohio and Iowa could be states that the Democratic Party would target. And I do think that for the sake of winning there in future elections, it's never out of the question. Not a single state on this map, with the exception of maybe 5 to 10, are out of the question entirely for future elections. So I think Ohio and Iowa would be worthwhile investments. It may not pay off in 2022, but it might just in 2028 or 2032. The Republican Party played the long game with the Rust Belt, losing it for nearly 3 decades, losing it by double digits in 2008, and then winning it 8 years after that. So these are my 5 target states. I also am going to include the state of Georgia. I think that's a given as to why the Democratic Party should focus on that state. Won by Biden, going to be exceptionally close on January 5th. Kelly Loeffler is still not going to be popular. It's going to be difficult for the Republican Party, but still also difficult. Equally as difficult for the Democratic Party in the state of Georgia. So my final 2 states, you may be surprised to see. The state of Alaska and also the state of Florida. But let me, hear me out. Looking in the state of Alaska, they actually just passed ranked choice voting. If you don't know what that means, there's a beautiful video out there. But pretty much it just allows voters to rank their candidates. So if you support, they did this up in Maine, so I'm going to use that as an example. If you support the Green Party candidate, you can rank them number 1. But if the Green Party candidate does not make it past the 50% threshold or, top 2 threshold, the top 2 candidates move on round after round after round, whoever you ranked second would be voted for next. So let's say you voted for the Green Party candidate on your first ballot, but they don't make it. They don't make it to top 2. But you ranked the Democratic Party on your second. Well, if they make it to the top 2, your vote would in turn go to the Democratic Party. Same thing applies for the GOP, and that's exactly what's going to happen in the state of Alaska. Now, I'm not the best person to explain this to you. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there that discuss it, but it's a fairly democratic system. Actually probably a little bit more democratic than some of our plurality systems where someone who wins just 31% of the vote automatically wins the election. So Alaska, I think the Democratic Party could try to get into the top 2, force Republicans to decide between Murkowski and also a Democrat, but also Democrats, I think, are going to back Murkowski on their, second or third choice on their ballot, which she probably will make it to top 2 every single time. So I think the Democratic Party comes away with a liberal Republican or a Democrat in this Alaska Senate race, which is exactly why they're going to invest in it, to either oppose a very strong right Republican potential nominee or push up a Democrat. Either way, I think that they're both liberal Republicans and Democrats may actually agree on something in the state of Alaska. So Florida. Florida has been the center of a lot of political attention recently. It just moved over even more to the GOP in 2020 compared to 2016, one of the few states to do that, literally one of the few states. I think there may be 5 or 6, and not by just a small amount, by over a percentage point. And I think when you're looking at the state of Florida, I would say, okay, moving past this election, it might not be as competitive as it was in 2008 or 2012. That's because Obama did something different. Even when Obama won this state both times, he ran ahead in the popular vote, sometimes by 4 or 5%. When Obama won the state of Florida by 2-3 points in 2008, he won the popular vote by 7 points. So it was still a significant decrease in terms of the percentage. This time, Florida, went against the popular vote percentage by 8 points. By 8 points. That is not exactly, a state that you would normally characterize as a swing state. But I do think that in 2022, if Marco Rubio chooses not to run, this race could absolutely be competitive. I think the Republican Party will still have the upper hand in the state of Florida, but the Democratic Party should definitely not give up a singular seat in Florida. It should give up a singular statewide race in Florida just because of a 2020 election performance, or even past this election looking in 2022. Florida is worth fighting for the Democratic Party, whether it's the Senate races, whether it's the presidential races, whether it's the governor races, which is also up in 2022, whether it's the House races. The Democratic Party needs to focus on these states. They need to hone in on these 8 target states. And, for all we know, this map could expand. Popular Democrats could run in some races. But these 8 target states, I think, are the best states for the Democratic Party moving forward in order to be competitive in 2022 and have a real shot, and I mean that seriously, a very real shot at winning back the United States Senate majority under a President Biden in a Republican wave year. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my post-2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.